Yeah, Josh, appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Steve Craig. I'm the
Hmm.
Vice President of Sales for the Central in Canada. We play in the dental water space. I work for a company called Solmetex. What we did was we took five organizations, we merged them into one, and we're now the only comprehensive end-to-end water solution organization that handles water into a practice, through the patient, and exiting the practice. So we really work with how do we keep practices, patients, and the environment safe and compliant.
Right, right. I mean, that's obviously a big deal. When did that happen, and kind of how did that come about? Were you part of the company when it did happen?
I was not part, I
Consolidation.
was part of the company during portions of it.
Okay.
So I started my healthcare journey out in ophthalmology.
Hmm.
Spent almost 10 years in ophthalmology doing everything from a pharma rep to an OMR rep to managed care to leadership. And at that time, we were kind of building out the DSO space for ophthalmologists that didn't want to go in the hospital for the surgical centers. And that's where I got recruited into dentistry over 23, 24 years ago. Johnson and Johnson was looking to enhance their presence in the DSO space, which is a dental support organization, which would be just a conglomerate of dental practices owned by either a PE group, founder. Right now, those kind of start at about three locations. The largest in the U.S. right now is 1,900 practices. So I was recruited to J&J to kind of work on that team. So I built that space out on a team, and then got tapped on the shoulder to move into leadership. Then eventually, leading leaders of leaders, and that's when my original CEO from my early J&J days reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just became the CEO of a company called Solmetex. We're going to purchase four other companies. We're going to merge all five into one. We have no presence in the DSO space. Would you like to join the journey all over again?" So that's when I signed up. Spent about 2 years building that presence and that face and name and recognition in the DSO space. And then, as he did about 24 years ago, he tapped me on the shoulder and moved me into leadership. Now leading leaders of teams. So we have an inside team that makes sure that our customers are purchasing products on a regular basis. Most of our products are used quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. We have an outside team calling in the private practice space, calling up and down street dentists. We have an enterprise team that calls on in the DSO space, working with the large conglomerate groups. And then we also do have another surgical arm to our business. So we have a surgical team that calls on all the specialists doing implant dentistry.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, that kind of hits it from every angle. And so I'm not familiar per se with the dental space as far as the
Yeah,
sales aspect of it. But I am in anesthesia. I've been in orthopedics, CNT, radiology, radiation oncology, urology. A lot of different specialties. So obviously the sales process. That's but having a few different sectors, having a few different options, different call points. That's obviously an all-encompassing solution that you guys have. So that's really cool. As far as what a typical day, and obviously congratulations, belated as well, to be able to be the head of this operation as far as sales and being able to drive results with five different lines really behind you. So that's great. As far as what a typical day looks like for you right now, I mean, what would you say that encompasses?
yeah, a lot of it's really trying to support our team that's out working with customers. I'm a big believer in, my team is the number one customer. And if I take care of the team and the rest of our organization takes care of our teams, they'll take care of the customers they serve, who will take care of the communities that they work in. So a
Yep.
lot of my day is proactively talking about the organization, talking to other people in the space, but then also a lot of it's working with the teams, joining calls with them, uh, sharing what is going on in the industry, what we're seeing with our products, kind of how I can help develop and train and recruit them to be better. And like you said, we cover just about every single specialty in dentistry. And really, how our company's kind of made up is, Solmetex is primarily working with, the water exiting the practice. So that's vacuum line cleaners, amalgam capture, and all that. There's federal laws that they need to capture that. Unfortunately, dentistry is one of the largest pollutants to the waterways of a lot of those metals and mercuries and everything leaving a dental practice. So we help customize protocols for that. Stericyl is the second company we purchased, which is water testing, treating, and water shocking. That probably is the dirty secret in dentistry. About 70% of practices right now in the U.S. don't test, shock, or treat their water lines. And it's not really about the water coming in. Most times that has good quality, sometimes it doesn't. But then we really work with them of that water traveling through the practice. Dry Shield and Relief are our isolation dentistry products. That's where the water crosses over to the patient. So it's a device you can put in the mouth that can hold back the cheek, the tongue, do the suction for them. As we know, there's staffing shortages everywhere in the world.
Yep.
And currently, right now, dental is being hit pretty hard with that. So, if a doctor has enough dental assistants on hand, well, they can get back to true four-handed dentistry.
Yeah,
Because now the
absolutely.
assistant doesn't have to worry about the cheek, the tongue, the patient, the suction. This device will do it for them. But if they don't have enough assistance, it will now take care of that for them and do the suction, and they can get themselves through a procedure not as fast and efficient with an assistant, but it allows them to get through that procedure, not have to cancel patients. But the other thing the product does is it captures 96% of aerosols. And the reason why that's important is prior to COVID, we thought, if a patient presents to a practice and, they're not coughing, sneezing, runny eyes, runny nose, it's probably safe to see those patients because we always assumed the aerosols came out of the patient. Well, what we learned during COVID was 78% of the aerosols are coming out of the dental unit water lines. So it's not technically the patient, it's the water lines. So we also want to work with them to capture those aerosols to keep the teams that work in the practice safe. Because obviously that aerosol doesn't just stay in the operatory, it travels throughout the practice. But it now explains why dentistry has one of the highest rates of eye infection, ear infection, upper respiratory infection, nasal infection. So we really work with them to keep them safe. And Dry Shield is primarily we use with the doctors and the dental assistants. And then we just purchased another company on December 31st, which is called Relief, which does isolation dentistry in the hygiene operatories. So it's a device for the hygienist. It works a little differently just because they need to work in the whole mouth at a given time. Whereas Dry Shield, it's more isolation. They're working on certain portions of the mouth when dentists are doing surgery or their typical cases. And then we have a whole other arm to our business. So, when surgeons are doing procedures, in true surgical and the surgical ops, they're using saline. But for most of their daily work, whether it be extractions of teeth, pulpotomies, which is the baby root canal, those type of things, they're using regular water. Well, you've now opened up the bloodstream of the patient. So we really consult with our surgical groups and our specialty groups around making sure they have safe, clean water. Now they've opened up the bloodstream to the patient. And then once we get that under control, we teach them how to do socket preservations more efficiently, a way to grow back bone at a more cost-effective, more predictable rate, and really work to train them in that. So that's primarily what we do. So we're working with all those different teams to make sure we're supporting our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that all in one portfolio is a really powerful story, Steve. So I mean that this is it all sounds great. And obviously you don't think about every day as far as dental operations go, the water and the cleanliness of it, being sanitary and so that's obviously really important. And it's great to hear that you're doing, this great work. Would you say you're more focused on, growth, operations, partnerships at this stage? You're kind of all three.
Kind of all three. I mean,
Mhm.
really what we're really looking to do is how do we help build custom protocols so they can follow that, make sure they're keeping the team safe, the patient safe, the community safe. So we really help develop, like I said, an end-to-end water solution. We have competitors in the marketplace. Competition's a great thing. It keeps everybody honest and safe. But we're the only one that handles, like I said, the water in the practice, through the patient, and out of the practice. All our competitors touch a piece of that. So we're able to really consult with our customers to build that custom protocol of how do you want that to be, implement that protocol, train the teams on that protocol. More importantly, explain the why that we're following this protocol, what we're doing in the different stages of the water entering the practice, through the patient, and out. And then we have a tool that allows them to track all that to make sure that they're doing the testing when they should, they're doing the shocking when they should. Yeah, and the hard part for what a lot of what we do is it's a lot of out of sight, out of mind.
Mhm.
The average dental practice is probably open about three days a week, about 7 hours a day, which means the water is sitting stagnant more than it's moving. So, if you and I live in the same neighborhood at a community pool and we only allowed people to swim in that pool 3 days a week and never test, shock, and treat that water, after about a week, nobody probably want to get in that pool. That's visible, so it's easy to be able to see that. Well, the dental unit water lines, those are running through the floor, through the walls, through the chairs, so they're not visible. So that's why it's important to make sure you're testing, shocking, and treating those water lines so you have safe, compliant water for those patients. And water is, like you said, massively overlooked, but it is a number one instrument in dentistry. There's nothing they can do in dentistry without water. So they could have 1,000 patients sitting in the waiting room, but if they don't have power, they don't have a compressor and a vacuum, they don't have water, they can't treat any patients.
Hmm. Now, what major shifts are you seeing right now in dental compliance, environmental regulations, in this space?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing things. Like I said, for the water exiting the practice, there is a federal law that they have to make sure they're capturing the amalgam so it's not going back to municipalities and impacting the waterways. And it doesn't take a lot of amalgam to really mess up, say, Lake Michigan. It's a small amount that could really impact that lake. And then on the water testing, shocking, and treating, like I said, about 70% don't test, shock, and treat. There are two states that have come on now, and the reason why they're coming on is there's been massive outbreaks throughout the nation. The largest one was in Anaheim. A bunch of kids came in for a pulpotomy, again, a baby root canal. And unfortunately, one kid presented at an emergency room in California. Luckily, one of the world's most infectious infection doctors was on call and recognized that. And it's something that they should maybe see once in a lifetime. Well, 3 or 4 days later, another child presented. And that's something, like I said, they should see once in a lifetime. So they started looking at, well, this ended up being the largest water outbreak that has happened to date. It happened in 2015, still hasn't even settled in court yet. But that's what we're trying to prevent, and we're starting to see those more and more. And there's probably a lot more that aren't even ever reported because they don't get that large, they don't get to the class action lawsuit. So now the state of Washington was the first one to pass laws after outbreaks in the state of Washington, and now Georgia has come on, and now we have Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and in California that are signing legislation due to outbreaks. So hopefully we'll start to see that. Right now, two states, like I said, are mandated. 23 states, it's recommended. I think we all know how recommended goes. If
Hmm.
two frogs are sitting on a log and or five frogs sitting on a log and two decide to jump, that doesn't mean there's three because deciding and doing are two different things. And recommended is something that's often overlooked. And then, unfortunately, the rest of the states are kind of a free for all. So I think you'll start to see legislation take place because I think most of the public thinks that most of this water is under control on a daily basis, and unfortunately, it's not.
How are those trends impacting how some of these dental practices make their purchasing decisions? Has it affected it yet, or do you see a world in which in the short term future that would be the case?
Yeah, we're starting to see it. Obviously, in
Mhm.
Washington, it's been for quite some time. Georgia's been about a year now. So you're starting to see those states, people taking it more seriously. You're also starting to see the states where legislation's been put into effect it's probably better to get ahead of this than wait for laws to come into play. And a lot of it is, some of it's, the number one killer of any business. This is the way we've always done it. And I think some of it is we don't know what we don't know. I think we're getting to the point now where people know what they should be doing and a lot of it's just a simple, golden rule of, obviously if you're a dentist and you have your team members, they're probably getting their dental care from you. I think as this gets out more and more, I think most of those team members want to make sure the water's under control because their probably whole family and their kids are probably going there. Same with the dentist, their children and family members are probably coming there. So it's becoming more and more of a real world thing, and people realizing that we have to take action on this to make sure people don't get sick because it could lead to death. If not, it's the children in the Anaheim case. I mean, it just wasn't like a little infection. These kids lost jawbone, they lost teeth. They were put on antibiotics that are designed to cure leprosy, which means they're probably gonna have a shortening of life. They're gonna have organ failure and things down the road. So it's not a mild infection. This is something that we need to take seriously.
Absolutely, and practice is becoming more proactive as opposed to reactive. Obviously, that's the goal of the sales team. And to use that story as well. These dental practices, these dental clinics, trying to safety is number one, and no one even thinks about that. But bringing this issue up and then kind of walking them through how it could affect them in the future. That's in telling the story. I think that's really important. What would you say is working really well for you right now, as far as sales tactics in terms of getting Solmetex in front of new practices or DSOs?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's having the conversations. No one likes to be sold, but they love to buy. So a
Hmm.
lot of it is trying to figure out what their problems are. How can our solutions help solve problems that they have? And when you get into the compliance side of things, you're not talking about the sexy revenue side of the business, but what we are talking about is the softer side of EBITDA, of how do you protect the business. If you can cut costs, you're going to make those EBITDA dollars stronger when you go to transact. You're also keeping the legality and things out of it. And, that's the hard part. You and I take a trip to Vegas. One of us might spend $5, and when it's gone, it's gone. Unfortunately, the other one might mortgage our house or car. So everybody has a different gambling appetite, but also everyone has a different financial appetite of what they're willing to spend, how they're willing to protect their business. And I think we both know it's easier to sign the back of a check than the front of a check. So that's where we really try to build custom protocols to find out what's going to work for them. It's going to fit their gambling needs. It's going to fit their financial appetite. And then, like I said, the most important thing is implementation. How do you roll this out? How do you tell the why behind it? How do you use this to promote your practice? The dentist across the street, down the hall, may not be doing this. It's a great tool to proactively promote your practice. Everybody wants to go somewhere where it's safe, and they're not going to get sick. And it's one of the things people just don't think about, is water. I mean, I think in the U.S., most of us take it for granted. We go to our faucet, Lake Michigan has great water, you're drinking it. Not every community is like that. We've all heard about Flint, Michigan, and other things like that. So, not every area has great water. We work with them to, have systems that can bring in cleaner water or give them distilled water. But then we're also working, like I said, to test, shock, and treat those water lines to make sure that everybody's doing what the best they can, to get through that system. And you're going to have things happen all the time, but we have a whole team that works with them on the tech side to make sure we remediate if you have a water failure, and get you back on track so you can start seeing patients again. Because, whether it's healthcare, whether it's a dentist, which is in healthcare, they're all small businesses that make money, and they make money by seeing patients. The job is to help keep those patients, safe and healed, and doing better with their overall health. But that's where medical and dental is starting to incorporate together, because the mouth's connected to the body. Most of the disease states start in the mouth, and they translate to other parts of the body. If you have inflammation in your mouth, as you talked about a lot of the disease states you work in, you're going to have inflammation everywhere in the body, which is going to cause a lot of those problems all over.
Hmm. So does Solmetex, is it a direct sale? Are there any distributorships involved?
Yeah, we
And
have
then,
distributorships.
okay,
So we have
okay.
most of the big players in
Hmm.
dentistry. Medical distributors are starting to come into dentistry. So we do sell through distribution. Our surgical line is sold direct, but everything else is sold through distribution, with Stericyl, Solmetex, Dry Shield, and Relief.
Okay, got it. And then is it a capital plus consumables, or is it just one or the other?
It's a little bit of everything. Some of it's
Okay.
equipment, some of it's consumables. Like I said,
Hmm.
most of ours are like a lot of the equipment would probably be a one-time purchase. Most of the consumables and most of the products, like I said, are primarily used quarterly, semi-annually, or annually.
Which metrics would you say you're most focused on improving right now?
I think the metric that we're most on improving is, how many customers do we have? How are we converting customers over to the full portfolio, not just one aspect of that, not just managing water exiting a practice, how they manage the water coming in, like I said, through the practice, through the patient. So we do look to see how they're performing against the full portfolio. We're also, measuring growth, to make sure, like I said, 70% aren't test shocking and treating their water lines. How do we improve on that? You're going to see that through growth. A lot of times we're looking at, unit growth, because that's going to give you true organic growth. But a lot of it's, proactively going out and having conversations like you and I are having right now to
Hmm.
actively promote what we do in the healthcare sector. And I think, the world's changed. It's no longer who you know, it's who knows you. I think with AI and all that, you have to be proactively doing things like we're doing today. You got
Hmm.
to be doing things with your. We have a digital social marketing team. We have a marketing team. Obviously, the sales team is out talking to customers and all that. You're trying to hit everybody where they want to be hit. Some want to see videos. Some want to have reps come in and talk to them. Some want to read articles and studies. You got to be proactively hitting them everywhere, and that's also where the world is going. The AI is going to capture all that. So now the AI can find you, which means your
Hmm.
customers can find you. And the hopes is if you're proactively doing all this different type approach, by the time it comes to a customer wanting to reach out and talk to one of our sellers, they kind of already know, like, and trust us because they've seen all the content out there.
Right. Essentially turning cold leads into lukewarm or warm leads, is a
Absolutely.
really important part of it for sure. how do I mean, you kind of went over this just now, but what's the number one way you would say new customers typically discover Solmetex? Is it usually by cold call, whether it's physical form or emails, or like how do new customers typically come on, like the number one way?
Yeah, we track all that, and to
Hmm.
be honest, it comes from everything.
Hmm.
Like on Wednesday night, we're gonna have two different WebExes, one on the surgical side, one on the water side. We'll see people engaging in that. Obviously, the social media, the digital marketing team have been out proactively promoting
Hmm.
that. The sales team's been out proactively promoting that with their customers. One with current customers to make sure that you're keeping front of mind, but also to potential new customers that aren't probably doing a full portfolio and the compliance side of building out that protocol. So it's coming from a little bit of everywhere, and I think that's kind of where the world's at now. Everybody wants to learn and receive their information differently, and like I said, nobody likes to be sold, but they love to buy. So you should drink the Kool-Aid and love what you're doing and the products you're selling and the solutions you provide. But you also don't want to, do the old show up and throw up. You want to meet them where they want to be met. So that's why we're proactively doing it from all different angles.
What does the journey look like from, someone first hearing about you or first contact to actually purchasing, and how does that sales process, would you say, stack up against, the rest of dental equipment or medical in general?
Yeah, first we have to assess currently what they're doing. Are they doing a portion of a protocol? Are there people able to follow a protocol? Are they doing nothing? We see a little bit of everything. Obviously, if someone who's doing nothing, it's a tougher road to go down because anything you add to that's going to be a massive cost to the CFO who's looking at everything. But you really want to have those conversations how you're protecting yourself on the back end. But
Hmm.
when you're dealing with dental unit water lines, you're probably gonna have to remediate right from the very beginning. Because if you've done nothing, it's like your swimming pool. If you purchased a brand new home and they haven't changed the water or and shock tested and treated their water in 2 years, you're probably starting from scratch. You probably have to drain that water and make sure you get everything good and compliant and where it needs to be. So we have to walk through that process, whether they're converting from another product. We use silver ion technology, which is like no other product on the market. We're fortunate enough to have the gold standard products in most of what we do. But the other product on the category is iodine. Well, iodine is going to leach into the tubing, it's going to leach into the bottles, and silver and iron aren't going to like each other. They're kind of like water and oil. So what we need to do is really clean out that system to be more proactive and get rid of the 25-year-old technology they were using and introduce the state-of-the-art technology. So a lot of it's really doing those retrofits, getting them set up for the right way, and then showing them how we can cut a massive amount of steps in that process to keep their people going. Because the hardest thing with any compliance program is people have to do it. So you can set up the program, but still humans have to actually do it. There's no AI yet today that can actually do all the protocol and all the steps for them. So that's where we really spend a lot of time explaining the why behind this, why we're protecting the organization, why we're protecting them as themselves. Like I said, not having to breathe in the aerosols. They probably come here as patients. So we sell a lot of that why to them and then get them going. So it's not as easy as just installing the product and going. There's a lot that takes place in that process.
Would you say the point where you feel like you could lose momentum or visibility is that compliance point where you're recommending something and then maybe it gets tied up a little bit? Would you say that that would be the point that, is the make or break for some of these deals that you come across or that you see at a high level?
Yeah, I think, having the conversation and walking through a protocol and building that's the easy part. When they kind of sign the dotted line there, that's the easy part. The hardest part's the implementation process because you got to get everyone to change kind of what they're doing, understand why they're doing it, what they're doing differently, how this is going to impact their patients, how it's going to impact them, and then walking through the steps of doing that. And then at the end, like I said, we have a portal that tracks all this to make sure they're testing when they should be, shocking when they should be. Um, you know, that is always, over people's heads too. Before it was just kind of on the honor system. Well, now there's something kind of tracking to make sure you're doing it. But like I said, that's the hardest part of the protocol process is one, understanding, and then two, tracking to make sure you're doing it. And the hard part is I don't think humans fear change. I think they fear sudden change. So when we're you doing this today and switching to that tomorrow, it gives people anxiety of that. But if you can explain that why we're doing this, what we're walking through, how this is going to make your life easier, how it's going to cut steps, how it's going to cut cost. You want to have those conversations. But like I said, you're really finding out what's their issue in the practice. Why do they struggle with the protocol? Why sometimes can't they follow it? Everybody's busy. Their job is to see patients and get them healthy. So it's really finding out what's their roadblock and how can we help solve that for them.
Do you think the implementation roadblock is more of an industry-wide issue, or do you think that's more specific to how Solmetex operates in particular?
No, I think it's an industry-wide
Hmm.
issue. I think it's in most healthcare. I saw it
Yeah.
in ophthalmology too.
Hmm.
When you're switching, say your cataract system or your LASIK system, the people always order what they ordered. Now they're ordering something different. Now there's going to be some tweaks of how we do this, how we perform this. So I think it's pretty common in healthcare. But like I said, it's that sudden change. So you really have to make sure the implementation process is the number one thing. And like I said, finding out where their roadblock was is going to help them understand that why a lot easier, of cutting steps, cutting costs, cutting whatever it is to help them. And that's what we're there for. We're there to make their life easier and obviously make the patient's outcomes better.
Hmm. As far as the sales process goes, are you able to track where some of your best customers are coming from and what's driving conversions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously we have all the data to see
Hmm.
who's purchasing, how frequent they're using it. It's one thing to convert over. It's another thing to be consistent at that. And really what we try to do at the end of the day is take the solutions that are the best in class to do this and how do we simplify that? So if you can
Hmm.
simplify that, then they start to see that they're going through less steps. It is cutting costs, so like just to change a straw drops into a water bottle. You need to shock that line. Our product, you don't have to remove the straw to shock the lines. You don't have to do anything. So the competitive products, you'd have to go through, over 300 steps to do what ours does in one step. And ours lasts a full year. The other products do not. So it's a massive time savings. But like I said, you really have to show them why that's going to benefit them working in their practice, and more importantly, why that's going to benefit the outcomes for their patients.
And so that you have a system that gives you visibility into that, all the metrics as far as pipeline, distributor performance, end user demand, any other usage indicators as well. You do have that system in place.
Yeah, we have that in place so we
Specifically.
can
Okay.
really track, work with the teams to make sure that they know where their business is coming from, where their challenges are, where they might have lost a customer, where they've gained a customer. You want to show all that because, like I said, we're trying to hit people from all different angles. So they're coming into the portfolio of products in different ways. A seller is only as good as understanding their business and understanding their market.
Where do you want Solmetex to be in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, like I said, we're kind of the gold standard product as it sits today. What we're really
Hmm.
trying to do is how do we take that number of 70% of offices not test shocking and treating? How do we see that number drop, to 60 to 50 to 40 to 30 to 20? One, our company will do better, but more importantly, the teams are going to be safer. They're not breathing in those aerosols. The water is going to be safer. You're going to see better outcomes for those patients. So that's where we want to be. But with that said, we're always evaluating. Like I said, the number one killer of any business is this is the way we've always done it. So even though we have the gold standard products, we're constantly evaluating, is there a better way to do this? Are there better products out there that could do that? We don't want to sit on our laurels of doing that. So, we're constantly going to different trade shows. We're constantly, working in the R&D department, seeing what else is out there. Is there a better way to do that? We don't want to get caught up in being the next Kodak, Sears, Blockbuster, any of those type companies. You always have to be looking to expand and evaluate. I think we're all, whether it's our products, whether it's our organization, whether it's us as employees inside the organization, we're all like trees. We're either growing or dying. So you're either trying to get better and get into better rooms and learn more and discover more, or you're dying, as we saw with,
Hmm.
like I said, with Sears, with Blockbuster, with Kodak, of not innovating and taking it to the next step.
If you could solve one major challenge today, what would it be?
I think if I could solve one major challenge today, are you talking for my team? You talking just for the industry?
I'd say for your team and for the company in general.
Yeah, for my team and the company in general, I think a lot of it is, working with our customers, making sure that they're understanding what we're doing, the why behind it, selling the story better of we're the only comprehensive end-to-end water solution getting them to understand that and how we're trying to make their life easier to do that. And I think a lot of it's just, who you surround yourself with. We spend a lot of time talking about that as a team of really, where do you spend your time? Who are you spending your time with? Making sure you can help people understand what's going on. But that's our ultimate goal is not only how do we really enhance what we're doing, but how do we change the dynamic of water not being the dirty secret in dentistry anymore, getting more people to test, shock, and treat their water lines.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, this was great. I really appreciate you sharing all that. Obviously, it's a super interesting space, very interesting product, kind of an all-in-one solution as far as as far as water goes in the dental space, and that's it's really cool. And obviously, with regulate how regulation is shaping demand, a lot of interesting takeaways. Solmetex obviously doing some great work here, and yeah, no, I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the time, Josh, and it was great to get to know you in the pre-call. It's great to get to know you now. You're doing incredible things on the medical side. Like I said, we're all in this healthcare together.
Hmm.
The mouth is and the head's connected to the body, so we
Yep.
all got to work together and figure out, how do we get the medical dental integration in one. I think you're going to start to see that down the road. I think you'll start to see employers realize that they can offer their employees better care by having the same dental medical because there really is no such thing as dental insurance. It's a coupon, it's a subsidy. There's nothing to insure. You're going to file a claim every time you walk in. Medical is more of true medical insurance. But I think, right now, with everyone not having the same dental medical may not be as concerned about the mouth because it's not going to impact them if they're not, if this is the dental insurer and they're not on their medical plan, well, it may not impact them as much. So, I think we're going to see a lot more connection between medical and dental as we move forward. I think every day and every year it's going to get stronger, and I think AI is going to help